On his show last week, Bill Maher grilled Ann Coulter on immigration.
Immigration policy where we would choose the best in the world, and that was changed. This is a fairly recent policy.
We would choose the whitest in the world. That's
your audience. No, we wouldn't, but look, the pre-1970 immigrants were more educated, made more money, were more likely to buy houses, and 30% of them went home. Right. Now no one goes home. They go on welfare, and they are far more likely to be on welfare than the native population. I think a nation's policies should be concerned with the people already here, and that includes the immigrants who came last year and the year before. It should be people who live here benefit, not to become the, battered woman's shelter of the world, where we're bringing in the hardest cases and, the wife beaters and the single mother with 8 kids.
Again, how do we? But again, I don't feel these assertions are borne out by stats, because they have stats from different governmental departments. Like you say, there are actually 30 million illegals, whereas every other department I can find
they're
says
all using
12.
the same number, though.
I mean, I've read everywhere that actually the net immigration from Mexico in the last 7 years has been 0. Because our economy got worse, theirs got better. Mexican women used to have 7 children, and now they have 2. I think that would make a big difference. So let's say everything you say is true, which it isn't.
Let's say it isn't. That's not okay. Your snotty little mark aside, it's irrelevant. The point at issue is: should America's immigration policy be used to benefit the people already here, or should it be benefiting Pakistani pushcart operators, illiterate in their own language, never mind ours, who come here, go on welfare, commit terrorism, engage in crimes?
All right,
why wouldn't you look out across the world like a sports team does and try to get the creme de la creme? Not like this audience. We don't want these people. We want the creme de la creme. We want to up the average. Up the average.
You gotta give it to her. She ain't afraid. You gotta give her that.
But she's also wrong.
Okay. We're getting a lot of crime and welfare use.
Your imaginary friend, Jesus Christ? Would he be okay with this attitude about the...
Yes, of course.
Okay.
You don't have to take homeless people to sleep in your bed to prove you're a Christian. This is our home.
Seems like he would like that. Okay.
So my initial reaction can pretty much be concisely summed up by his panelist.
Up the average. And we already had the Puerto Ricans.
I thought that was perfect. So, getting to her actual argument, she says, quote, "Should America's immigration policy be used to benefit the people already here, or should it be benefiting Pakistani pushcart operators illiterate in their own language, let alone ours, who come here, go on welfare, commit terrorism, and engage in crimes? Why wouldn't you look out against the world like a sports team and try to get the creme de la creme?" And she argues that we should not become the battered women's shelter of the world. So I think that what she really has is 2 main concerns. Now, first and foremost, she says that undocumented immigrants are a threat to U.S. peace and stability because they come here and they commit acts of terrorism and contribute to crime. Now, her second point is that she thinks we should focus resources such as social safety net programs on our citizens and not on undocumented immigrants. So let's go ahead and address both of her claims. So for point A, Mexicans are not creating terrorism because presumably she's referring to Mexican immigrants, right? So she says that they come here, they commit terrorism. Well, who's committing terrorism in the U.S.? Well, the majority of it comes from white people. Between 2006 and 2011, domestic terrorism is perpetrated mostly by right-wing extremist groups, and these are comprised of white people. So we don't really have these statistics for recent years, but there's another finding that says that since 2002, white people have been mostly responsible, particularly right-wing extremist groups, for the majority of terrorism that occurs in the U.S. So the FBI writes, formal right-wing hate groups such as the National Alliance, the World Church of the Creator, and Aryan nations represent a continuing terrorist threat. Although efforts have been made by some extremist groups, to reduce openly racist rhetoric in order to appeal to a broader segment of population and to focus increased attention on anti-government sentiment, racism-based hatred remains an integral component of these groups' core orientations. Al Jazeera writes, since 9/11, there have been more deadly attacks in the U.S. carried out by right-wing assailants than so-called jihadists. What's more, right-wing attacks have killed almost twice as many Americans. So I don't get where she's getting that undocumented immigrants are contributing to terrorism. Maybe she's talking about people who immigrate from the Middle East and North Africa, but most of that type of immigration is all legal because it's a lot more difficult to get here legally. Now, addressing her point about crime, the AIC writes that immigrants are less likely to commit crimes or be behind bars than native-born citizens, and high rates of immigration are not associated with higher rates of crime. This holds true for both legal immigrants and the undocumented, regardless of their country of origin or level of education. So if we look at this chart here, we'll see that 3.5% of native-born males are currently incarcerated, whereas only 0.7% of foreign-born males are incarcerated. Now, that doesn't actually control for undocumented immigrants. So even less than 0.7% of undocumented immigrants are incarcerated, which implies that they're not committed crime. And furthermore, undocumented immigrants who are guilty of perpetrating crimes, well, they are deported. So her first claim that undocumented immigrants come here and they contribute to terrorism and commit crime, well, that's patently false. Moving on to her second point. If the allocation of funds is her main concern, then she needs to answer these questions. First, why doesn't she care about war spending? So to Ann Coulter, death spending is okay, but helping people, that's not okay. We can't spend our money on social safety nets for undocumented immigrants. They should just be homeless when they come here. But war, that's 100% okay, even though we're killing people with that money. So my next question is, Ann Coulter, would you deny healthcare to an undocumented immigrant who was going to die if he or she did not receive that care? And also, should children of undocumented immigrants go hungry? That's another question for her to answer. If her answer is yes, and that we shouldn't care, well, that's problematic with respect to her own religion, because her God would not agree with this. So getting to Bill's question for her, what would Jesus do? She's wrong according to her own holy book. She says that, no, Jesus wouldn't think that we should bring a homeless person home and let him sleep in our bed. But let's look at the Bible and see what the Bible says. Galatians 6:2 says, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the laws of Christ. Deuteronomy 15:11 says, for there will never cease to be poor in the land. Therefore I command you, you shall open wide your hand to your brother, to the needy, and to the poor in your land. Matthew 5:42 says, give to no one who begs from you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. And there is a lot more. So, in conclusion, she's right. Jesus wouldn't think that she should allow a homeless person to sleep in bed with her. He would think that she should give up her bed entirely and that she should sleep on the floor in order to allow that homeless person in her bed. So, according to her own holy book, she is immoral when it comes to undocumented immigrants and on immigration in general. Her underlying motivation, I think, is racism and xenophobia. By creme de la creme, she's not talking about people with PhDs or people who have contributed to the world society. She's talking about white people. And Bill Maher was right to bring up that point. So, Ann Coulter, you have proven once again that you are bigoted. She, in essence, is... she's a white nationalist without actually saying it.